Hey there, beautiful joy seeker. Welcome to the I Am Changing podcast. I'm your host, Kaz Humphreys, and I'm a change facilitator. In today's episode, I'm going to discuss the need to tune up your joy seeker skills to reframe that mindset as we start re-emerging back into the world after COVID lockdown. This is absolutely a huge founding skill that we use with coaching law of attraction tools. And I use these techniques personally and professionally on a daily basis to boost my motivation and that of clients, to activate change in my life, and to raise my physical and vibrational energies. Today's episode, I'm going to share 26 tips for shifting those gears to tune up the mindset in order for you to become your own joy seeker. And let's face it, by becoming a joy seeker, we build up those credits in our happiness account, and that helps boost our well-being as well as our immune system. One of the best pieces of wisdom I've embraced during the pandemic has been this: lockdown is a gift from the universe to work on myself. Now, I know that does sound a little strange, but during these apocalyptic times, we could perceive this as an opportunity for personal growth. There's no disagreement for me that these last 2 years have been really tough with homeschooling our kids, whilst we're working remotely and being isolated from each other. I'm hearing a lot of fatigue language lately with everyone I run into because they're tired from thinking, feeling, and living the same narrative day in, day out. And what I'm observing is that all things COVID have run our lives and we've disconnected from our needs. But guess what? All things are difficult until we step back from the stress trigger and actually observe what is making us feel unhappy, and then try to modify aspects of our life to make it easier. So let's be honest, right now, we've got some time to observe what's going on around us, but more importantly, what's going on inside of us. This is because you're not absorbed in everyday normal routine. The gift of COVID has created the scenario of eating baked beans on toast every day. It's now so fucking boring that we've almost numbed ourselves to any different story. You aren't doing the normal crazy stuff of running here and there, fitting in all the sport and the socialization and the after school stuff. You've essentially been gifted a timeout from the universe to reboot, to reset, to rejuvenate and regenerate. So let's do something with that before life returns to some form of quasi-normal. And before you give me every excuse under the sun, I can see how much time you've got based on the amount you've been posting on social media. I'm an ex-detective and an auditor. I pay attention to shit like that. In fact, you've probably been Netflix binging as well. But what if I was to suggest spending half an hour exercising or working on your side hustle or your passion? It would require effort and for you to apply yourself. And for some reason, this sounds difficult or like hard work, or worse, that you don't fucking deserve it, and you do. So let's make the time count. Now is exactly the time to ask yourself, what might bring me joy instead of ho-hum? None of us want to settle for an average life, which is discoloured by our inability to make our deepest wishes come true. But prior to COVID-19, what is it that you were doing? Were you a mouse on the wheel simply going through the motions? Tony Robbins advocates that the first step to goal setting and creating the invisible to become visible is to look at what it is your dream life holds. But do you know how to follow through from that goal setting to get the dream life through to implementation instead of giving up early and not achieving? Goals, when they're planted deep within our subconscious, should actually prompt our motivation into stimulated action. Goals which get us out of bed in the morning and make us hungry to achieve the small steps required to move forward and closer to living that dream life. But where do we get the drive to get and remain motivated? Dopamine is a brain neurotransmitter, and it's often considered a pleasure molecule, but it's actually so much more. Dopamine makes us desire things and drives us out of the lounge chair, away from the TV, and to our projects which give us rewards. Scientific research on the rates whereby pleasure centers of the brain were stimulated demonstrated that dopamine drives the brain developmental neural pathways. Hence, repeating patterns to achieve pleasure or reward is what creates the motivation. Pretty cool, right? I know it's a bit nerdy. Hence the trick with goal implementation. Do a task associated with a pleasurable reward. Your brain will release dopamine because it's anticipating you will feel good. This is why drugs are so addictive. What if your personal daily pursuit of happiness triggered the similar effects to taking drugs? You'd do it, right? Well, in actual fact, when you're scrolling through social media newsfeed, playing the video games, watching the TV, you're flooding your brain with dopamine and giving yourself a false hit. You feel let down when the high doesn't arrive. So you do it more and more and for longer and longer to achieve success. Just with this example alone, you can see how COVID could actually be a gift to disconnect from that fast lifestyle, that eternal seeking for the dopamine hit, and reset how you seek happiness in your life. And let's face it, when you're doing these mindless, detached activities, seeking the dopamine hit, you're not actually connected with what you need. So other than the obvious, social distancing, what you need to detach from or connect to, helps us drive where our actual happiness in life is. And I'm going to ask you this: do you actually know what makes you feel happy without involving a handheld device? Now, take that any way you want it. It's a Sunday morning. Let's go. And yes, we could be talking masturbation toys here as well. I'm going to be a bit cheeky today. So I'm going to ask you right here, right now, darling, what makes you happy? The main difference, other than genetics, between happy and unhappy people is pretty simple. It's habits. Happy people engage in more happiness-boosting habits, while unhappy people engage in more misery-inducing habits like baked beans on toast. It's as simple as that. So let me gift you 26 different ways that you can become a joy seeker in your life and put some credits into your happiness account this long weekend. Number one, experience flow more often. And by this, I mean allowing yourself to become fully immersed and involved in the present moment. Because when we're not present, we're either in the past or the future. And those are two time references that we actually can't control. We can't enjoy anything. We can only relive or project a feeling, a thought, or a worry. And it's often fear-based. So being in the present moment means immersing yourself into a joke or an activity or the event that's happening around you. Number two, exercise regularly. And this is so that you have some physical and mental stimulation and the benefit outcomes from obviously moving our body. But moving our body also helps us shift out stagnant emotion, and it gives us more space for the joy to be connected with. Number three, stop and smell the roses. Now, I know that's an old-fashioned statement, but can I challenge you? How often do you savor the moment? How often do you hit the pause button and appreciate a positive experience? And even if it's just seeing the garden outside and all your flowers growing and looking at all of the colors that the universe has gifted you outside. Keep this simple. Practice the pause, look around you and see all that you do have, rather than the COVID baked beans on toast mindset of all the things you don't have. This leads into tip number 4, practice mindfulness. The art of being fully present and aware of what we are experiencing actually is referring to how we get out of our head and into our heart space. And our heart space is where we connect with our innate wisdom. It's where we connect with this psychological reference to the inner child, because there's a version of us, an energetic version of us, that records every interaction we've ever had on a cellular level. And so this is why we have these pain bodies and emotional bodies in this auric field with all of this energetic information. And so the more we connect with who we are, what we're doing, what we're experiencing, how much joy it brings us, then we become our own. It's like we've become our own internal barometer. And so when we're connecting with our barometer, you're either filling up and making deposits in your happiness account, or you're draining it because you've got the ho-hums going on. Recommendation tip number 5, meditation. Meditation actually gets you into a space where you're breathing purposefully, you're opening up the heart, you're rewiring your brain for happiness through complete relaxation. It's an utter commitment and dedication to self when we meditate. And did you know that just 3 minutes of meditation can have a positive physical benefit that lasts 6 hours in your day? Think about that. 3 minutes when you first get up in the morning, 3 to 5 minutes of just meditative, quiet practice where you tune in to who you are, what makes you happy, what brings you joy, can give you a positive effect that lasts nearly the entire day. So worth it, right? Tip number 6, spend some time outside. The more you can do this, the more you're improving your mood accelerator hormones. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. When we step outside, we're getting exposure to daylight. We actually need, our skin and our eyes need exposure to sunlight to create vitamin D in our body. But daylight also helps reset our circadian rhythm. So our on-off switch, when we're on and we're active and we're vibrant versus when we should be off and sleeping and regenerating the brain. Getting outside also helps us get grounded and become more centered in ourselves. Tip number 7, pursue meaningful goals. The reason I say this is when we break down, when we have a dream life, and we sit back and we work out, well, what are the steps or the goals that I'll need to achieve to live that dream life? And then you can set very small actionable actions to achieve each goal. This is what gives us a reason to get out of bed and become motivated every single day. And when you're connected with your goal, it's like you're plugging in your joy seeker, your happiness account into the dream life. And each time you achieve an action, each time you tick off a goal, you're making deposits, really big deposits into your happiness account because you're connected with achieving another step closer to the dream life that you dream of. Tip number 8. It's now time, people, with lockdown restrictions lifting, we get to spend time with friends and family. And over the last 2 years, we've become quite creative in how we do that and using technology. And what I'm going to suggest to you too is I want you to spend time investing in compassion and nurture with your social circle to improve your listening skills, your empathy and communication skills. And I want you to apply this to yourself. I went to a party a couple of days ago to celebrate a friend's child's 18th. And nearly everyone had the baked beans on toast conversation. And how are you? And I'm missing this. And I've lost 2 years of my life. And I've said it, but how are you really? And when we started unpacking this with a few people that I sat down with and had beautiful immersive conversation with, what they realized was my garden looks fantastic. I've lost weight because I've been exercising. I feel more connected because I'm talking more with X, Y, or Z. I love coming together and actually hugging people today. So spending time with friends and family as we start to emerge out of lockdown is an absolute gift. We get to enjoy touch again and listening to people rather than just talk. We actually get to practice our communication skills because all we've been doing for 2 years is technology. So now we get to practice what we've lost. Tip number 9, celebrate each other's success. Respond with and share people's enthusiasm for another person. Share their experience, share their happiness and bask in their success. I don't know about you, but I've been doing a lot of work with students lately, whether they're year 11 and 12 students or whether they're even preppies grade 1 who have not been to school. They've been in lockdown and now they're trepidatious about coming back to a space where they've been told for the past 2 years it's not safe, they're better off at home. So we celebrate the small steps of putting on our uniform or sticking to our study routine and migrating through an exam and going, well, you don't have to do that again. Let's keep looking forward. And sometimes it's the little success of I see clients and they come to see me and they go, well, I put on pants today and I had a shower. I'm ticking the boxes. Don't think big on this. What are the small things? I got up, I woke up, I still have 2 hands and 2 feet. I was able to walk the dogs today. I was able to stay on top of the washing. Whatever it is, it's the little things that you can celebrate and be grateful that you are able to accomplish is what helps you put deposits into your happiness account. Tip number 10, engage in deep conversation. Sharing the stuff that matters deepens our connections and allows us to be vulnerable, raw, and speak our truth of what really matters. The happiness here comes from the sharing of dialogue. And as we come to emerge out of baked beans on toast lockdown, and when you do get to see people, challenge them with, I love you so much that we don't actually have to speak about baked beans on toast. Tell me about what you have planned for the next couple of weeks or months. Tell me something you're really excited about. Don't talk to me. Let's not talk about COVID. Let's take that off the table. I want to hear about you. How are you really doing? And look them in the eye as they say that. And if they have to pause, hold their hand or say it's okay, or let's have a cup of coffee and sit down and actually ask them, how are you really doing? Where do you really need to replenish and how do we go about facilitating that? Tip number 11, let go of materialism. Now, I'm going to quote this by Sonia. Now, I don't want to disrespect Lubomirsky. She quotes, a mountain of research has shown that materialism depletes happiness, threatens satisfaction with our relationships, harms the environment, and renders us less friendly, likable, and empathic, and makes us less likely to help others and contribute to our communities. Instead of focusing on our stuff, place your happiness meter against your experiences, friendships, passions, and hobbies in order to determine what brings you joy in life. Now, a classic example of this that I'm seeing, my daughter experiences social anxiety, so it's very challenging to get her out shopping. And we went out shopping yesterday, and God loved the 2 women in this shop that we went to. We explained what style and fabric we were looking for. My daughter has ADHD, so she is very tactile sensitive, only likes certain fabrics, doesn't like material sitting on certain parts of her body, so she's challenging to shop for. And because she's grown so damn tall, she's now way taller than me, we've had to cull and spring clean her wardrobe, and it got to a stage where she didn't have anything that fit her without exposing a whole half of her body. And when we went shopping, it was just so joyous because these women could not help us enough, and their smiles at seeing my daughter's face going, oh, this fits and I feel good. And she did a little fashion parade when we got home, and all we did was laugh over clothes. It was something that was so simple. And yet, as we were walking around the shops, we're seeing people with such, I can't even say it without being disrespectful for anyone, but the reticence that I saw from some of, having judgments over others for masking, not masking, for coding, not coding, for the judgment of others rather than just focus on you. People filling their shopping trolleys full of stuff because they haven't been out shopping for a year or 2 or getting ready for Christmas. And what I've come to learn is that what brings me joy is just sitting in a room full of people talking and having my senses overwhelmed by hearing the laughter and the dialogue and seeing all of the hugging going on at this 18th birthday party recently. it was amazing, and it was sensory overload because I've been so used to sitting in a room with just my husband and my daughter or just clients, and to sit in a room, a large open room, of course, socially distancing, but to see, to go into a restaurant and hear all the knives and forks clicking and hear the conversation and hear the footsteps. I challenge you, let go of the stuff and allow your senses to take you on a journey of experience. That kind of leads me into tip number 12. Give freely. And I'll quote this: true happiness consists of making others happy. It's an ancient Hindu proverb. Helping others through being kind, generous, and willing to lend a hand is a pillar stone to happiness. And you know what? I have to agree with that. Right now, Victorians are divided. And it's a bit like we're in Germany and there's the East and West, and there's a Berlin Wall dividing us over choices that we've made to what to put in my body. And I would encourage everyone to step beyond that. 2 years ago, you loved your friends and family for whatever reason. And if this is now an issue for topics of conversation with your friends and family moving forward, could I suggest that moving forward, you say to them, I love you enough to not talk about baked beans on toast, because I see and sense we have a difference of opinion. And I love you enough to talk about something different because I want to maintain that relationship. And if they don't agree and have to be heard, I hear you. I recognize and respect our difference of opinion. And it's okay to not agree. It's okay. I love you enough to change the subject. And if you don't want to, just know that I'm not being disrespectful. I'm being triggered and I'm moving on. Sometimes the gift of your truth is enough to reestablish your love for the other person and continue moving forward. Tip number 13, practice gratitude. As a law of attraction nut, I love this. And this is from Develop Good Habits. The emotion of gratitude has consistently been one of the strongest happiness boosters known in scientific literature. I'm not joking, end of quote. You'll hear me say this again and again. Your thoughts become your actions. So it makes sense that the more actively practicing gratitude you are, the more you'll have to be grateful for, and the more will be provided with things to be grateful for. It becomes a never-ending abundance cycle. Tip number 14 links with give freely. Tip number 12, practice forgiveness. This is probably my favorite quote of all time. And it's of Buddha, who wrote, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else, but you're the one getting burned. Forgiveness is never about the other party, but a gift to yourself, darling, to lighten the emotional burden of our response. Our inability to forgive harms ourselves more than anyone else, including wrongdoers. And so what I would say to you is use the Ho'oponopono prayer. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And this is how we start to have dialogue emerging from the baked beans on toast narrative to, I sense we have a difference in opinion, and I love you enough to change the subject and move forward together. And I respect the fact if you're not quite ready to do that. I'm going to pause this conversation. I'm going to regroup. Can I suggest you do the same? And we pick up where we left off from 2 years ago in a new way. And that leads into tip number 15. Have hope and optimism for the future. And I know, darling, this is really challenging right now with baked beans on toast and that whole COVID narrative and the unknown date for when things may or may not return back to the normal that we used to know. Here's the thing. When we have an intention to be hopeful and are open for future opportunities, we feel excited, enthusiastic, motivated and happy. We feel light. However, when we overthink and we go external from ourselves and worry about scenarios, we can feel anxious, depressed and devoid of meaning. So moving out of lockdown, make sure you've got some little goals that regardless of what the lockdown scenario shows, you'll be able to do them regardless of whether another lockdown is imposed. Number 16, comfort yourself in hard times. And I'm going to ask you now, darling, how have you been treating yourself over the last 2 years? Because it has been tough. Have you been self-critical, blaming, or putting yourself down? Or have you been able to pause and reflect, be positive, and seek opportunities for self-improvement? And I know that can be challenging, but what if you could lay all of the negativity down today, right now, and ask, well, what could make me happy? And then thank yourself for doing this one little thing, whether it's just going out for a coffee or walking your puppy, going outside and doing some weeding. What's something that you can do? And then go, you know what, I'm really glad I did that. Just be nice to yourself. 17, use your character strengths often. Are you courageous, confident, compassionate, loyal, and optimistic towards yourself on a daily basis? And don't go running into shame, blame, guilt right now. If you've been thinking, oh, no, I could use some work in that arena, use that as the gift of awareness and go, well done. I now see I've been shame, blame, guilting myself, and I can pause that and reframe into something positive this very second. Number 18, see your job as a calling. You actually gain more satisfaction from working for the greater good, which contributes to something larger than yourself. So when is your work just a job where you're making money? I was talking to some lovely women at this party recently, and they were relaying stories of how they were being abused. They work in a supermarket, and one of them said, I just work as a checkout chick, or I just do this. And I said, could we reframe that to you're feeding your community? You're being of service day in, day out, holding space for people to come in and safely get their groceries and then safely retreat home. You're instigating all of the rules, you're enforcing them with loving compassion and just observation. And her face lit up. She goes, you know what, I haven't thought of it like that. I said, it's been hard work, but can I say thank you for holding space for 2 years while you've copped all of this crap? And so we're able to then change the way she was looking at her job and see that she'd actually had a calling. She'd answered her calling. And, you know, when you can do that, you light up from the inside, from your heart space out. It's just miraculous to watch. Tip number 19, have things to look forward to. Happy people tend to live actively and somewhat busy lives, and the activities in their calendar provides anticipation of the happiness to come. And I think that's why so many of us took a hit, you know, this second year of lockdown, of not having things to look forward to. And what I encourage you, if you're challenged and trepidatious about moving forward out of lockdown, is have things on your schedule that you can do regardless of whether another lockdown is impeded or whether you're vaxxed or not vaxxed. You know, focus on what you can do and focus on how much fun you can have doing this thing. I know for me, tip number 20, spending money on experiences has been high on our list for at least a decade. I've long been a fan of experiences over gifts. It's what life is all about, not the stuff we can buy. A wise mentor once reminded me that when you're on your deathbed, you remember all the good times with your friends and family, not the good times with your hot red car or all of the stuff that you've bought over the years. I'm back to planning these experiences, and I've got some very small things on my list that I can do when lockdown lifts, and I've got some big ticket items so that when travel opens up again, I know where I'll be going, how I'll be getting there, what I'll be doing, where I'll be visiting. So think about the experience and what it gives you. So, for example, I love going to the movies, but because of COVID, we haven't been able to do that. So certain things, we'll go and buy a DVD. So think about the alternative. How else can I have this experience? Watch this new film, go and see these people. You know, there are other ways. There's always another way. Number 21, for making deposits in your happiness account, you have to limit your news consumption. External media is paid to create sensationalism, to involve an emotional reaction. And guess what? You'll react more intensely and for longer if the news is bad rather than good. And additionally, only one viewpoint is ever broadcast on the news, and it's generally what the government of the day approves. I've always said this all along. Find your news outlet that you trust the source of the science and the rhetoric, and be able to trust who's giving you advice. Get your news fix, get out. Number 22, aim for good enough. Did you know that research indicates that when we have a myriad of opportunities or possibilities to choose from, we actually get stuck in making choice based on regret, social comparison, and an inability to adapt and concern about status? If you're a maximizer, you're always striving for the best of everything. However, if you're a satisfier, you're happy when something is good enough. You can change to become a satisfier when you move the perception from perfection to realization and reality. And that's really what we need to be doing right now, is good enough and build upon it. Good enough, build upon it. Tip number 23, I love this one. Don't overthink shit. You bottom out your happiness account with overthinking, because each lap a negative thought does inside your head adds luggage to the shit cargo that you're going to drag around. You start to second guess yourself. You do the self-doubt. You do the shame, blame, guilt. You create fears inside your head that didn't previously exist, like, what if I'm not good enough? If you find yourself stuck wallowing, mindfulness is going to be an exceptionally useful tool for you to unwind the pattern. Tip number 24, don't compare yourself to others. The minute you take your attention off yourself and what your heart, your gut reaction is saying to you, and you place it somewhere else, you've lost control, and you cease investing in implementing your goals towards your dream life. Stick with remaining mindful or grateful for all that you've achieved, and measure your success off you. Tip 26, pure intrinsic goals. The extrinsic goal is all about making it. The intrinsic goal is all about enjoying the process and linking with your values and those deeply held beliefs where your human needs are fulfilled. Final tip 26, spend time with your furry friends. We've recently, in the last 2 years, added 2 chocolate lab puppies to our household, and there's something about having a wet nose greet you when you're feeling challenged, patting their soft hair and having big, stinky cuddles. There's no narky discussions. There's just acceptance as love is exchanged. Animals are a happiness magnet and seem to soak up your negative Nancy with a single pat. So to wrap up today's episode, I'll leave you with this. Do what makes you happy. Be with you makes you smile. Laugh as much as you breathe, and love as long as you live. If you've been listening to the entire podcast series in 2021, you'll know I've previously recommended that one of the most empowering things you can gift yourself is to ask yourself a what question. From today's episode, I invite you to ask yourself, what joy can I invite into my life today? This question literally reprograms your conscious brain into solution-seeking actions rather than hosting a pity party. Darling, it also opens up your heart space to become a joy seeker. Thanks for listening today, gorgeous. There's daily inspirational posts on my social pages. Simply search for the ChangeChick and you'll find me. To support our alignment and connection, I've included links in the show notes. Thanks in advance for sharing this podcast within your own Change tribe. I hope it generates a fire of loving support and proactive discussion as to how you can take charge of your journey steps throughout life, regardless of the challenges that experience has brought you. I'm your podcast host, Kaz Humphreys, aka the Change Chick. The I Am Changing podcast is a reminder that we can all choose to change and bloom from within.